Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Big View, Ending Poverty in Your Community. At Circles, our mission is building community to end poverty through intentional friendships, personal transformation, and systemic change, led by the people closest to the challenge. And our vision for the future is all individuals live in equitable and thriving communities where poverty no longer exists.
Welcome to season 2 of the Big View podcast. I am so excited that you are here. My name is Kris Alexander. I am the Chief Learning Officer at Circles USA, and I am joined today by my co-host, Kamatara Johnson, the Executive Director at Circles USA. And I am so excited also to be welcoming Patty Herndon. She is from Circles Davis County, and she is both a circle leader there and the chair of the Big View team, which leads me into what we're going to be talking about today, or really looking at rather, which is season 2 is all about the Big View mindset. And today we're going to be specifically looking at centering those closest to the challenge. So when we're looking at effective systems change, one of our primary focuses is ensuring that the people that are affected by the system are the ones that are in charge of changing the system. And so we're doing that today by talking about Patty Herndon, who, like I said, is a circle leader and the Big View chair. So welcome, Patty. I'm so excited to have you here. And I would love if you would just begin by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you found Circles.
Well, I am a mom of 5 kids, and I've had some struggles with a recent divorce in 2019. And I was really struggling. I had just lost another job. I've gone through 9 jobs in 5 years because of just the mental health struggle that I've had with the divorce. It was kind of an ending of a 24-year marriage, and just trying to get used to the new situation was really, I was struggling. I was in a dark place. And a friend of mine saw Circles USA for Davis County on the 211 list for our area. And she's like, would that help? And I was like, I don't know. So in March of 2023, I just showed up to a meeting, and I brought in my planner, and I just came with an open heart and an open mind. This may be something for me. This may not be something for me. And I just kept coming back.
That's incredible. I love that. I love that story so much because it's just such a reminder that Circles is so much bigger than just economy or economic mobility or upward mobility, but rather it's this entire encompassing of our lives, right? That it really is community that's here to uplift and support everyone who's a part of it.
And I really needed a community, a safe place to be. I needed someone that understood what I was struggling with. I needed more resources, and I wasn't quite sure where to start. In my married life, I wasn't in poverty. Both me and my ex-husband were working. And so there were very few times in our married life where we needed to reach out for resources. So I wasn't even aware of what was out there. I grew up in poverty, and as a kid, you don't know what those resources are. You just know that you're lacking. You just
Mm.
know that you don't have the things that you need. And so when I walked into Circles, it was an opportunity to find people that knew what I was talking about and actually had ideas on where to go and what to do about it. And so for me, it was an aha moment. It's like, wait a minute, I've never heard of this program, and yet you do what? I remember at the end of the meeting, I had wrote a bunch of notes, and I'm like,
Mm.
they're gonna hook me up with this, and they've got network connections for my business, because I had a small business that I did just really low key when I was married, just when like medical bills would show up or something, the unexpected things. And so reigniting my business and trying to just survive. And so, yeah, amazing.
So I'm really curious, Patty, because you've been with the chapter for, almost 2 years now.
Pretty much 2 years.
And obviously you're coming for the relationships, the support, the resources, the moving from surviving to thriving, and you're mid-process with that. But the other goal of circles is that big view, the removing the barriers that keep people in poverty. So how did that land with you, that the big view is part of what circles does?
Well, it was interesting because I had been in the group for over a year, and Johanna, our coordinator, or Lamont and Johanna, were like, what do you want to do? You're here, you've got skills, you understand what the mission is. We've got these different resource teams. Which one would you like to help on? It was mostly a help on thing. And there wasn't anybody that they had currently that was working on Big View. And I was like, well, what's Big View? And they talked about some of the things that they had done in the past. And I'm like, yes, that
Mhm.
I don't want to be here. I don't want anybody else to go through what I'm going through. How do we get this going?
Mm.
Because we really didn't have the support of it in our chapter. Our leaders were doing the Big View nights, and they were just going through little things. And I was like, I'll take this on
Mhm.
because, like I said, I had years of success. I had walked out of poverty as a kid into my adulthood, and I've got a degree, I've got job experience, I've been successful. And so I was able to take this on, and I started asking questions. I started listening to stories. I wanted to hear what the families in our group were really struggling with. I knew what I was struggling with, but I didn't know what they were struggling with. And so I started listening to stories, and we started doing the math. What is poverty? What is poverty for our state? What is the
Mhm.
percentages? What classifies you as in poverty? It's not just a I can't meet my bills. Some of it is the bills are too big for me to even meet. Like when you only make $1,500 and rent for a two-bedroom apartment is 1,200, how do you make life happen? And so I worked with each one of the families in our group, and I asked them, what is your biggest struggle? What stresses you out on a daily basis? And that's where I started with our Big View group, is started to find those pieces and parts that help them feel like they mattered, that their story mattered.
Yeah. I love that it starts with listening. It's all about listening to people with a lived experience and then prioritizing and seeing, what is possible to work on together. But to begin with listening as the first step is so powerful.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're talking about just listening to the stories, and narrative change is actually another big view mindset that we're going to get into in a later episode. And I also love that it's you came into this role of big view, and your immediate gut reaction really was exactly what we're talking about here. Well, I need to hear from the people what challenges they're going through. And I also love this sort of, obviously you are one of those people who is or has been closest to that challenge of experiencing poverty both in childhood and as an adult, and I'm
Mhm.
sure those were, even like you mentioned, radically different experiences. So you had all of this experience, and you didn't go into it saying, well, I'm the expert on poverty because I've experienced it, even though that's what we're talking about, you still said, I know my parts, I know what I've struggled with, and I need more opinions and perspectives. So, like, that just natural mindset of curiosity that you're talking about is so pivotal to this role of leading the big view, of just being like, I only know what I know. So let me ask questions to find out what I don't know, and what I don't know, I don't know, right? So I just really love that you're bringing that piece in of like, yeah, I took this on and I just asked questions and listened to stories and met one on one with every family. Like, I'm saying it all again to reiterate to our listeners, like, how profound it is that that was just your natural inclination moving into this role, because I think that that really is the key for anybody who's doing systems change work in any arena, anywhere, regardless of what you call it. Whoever's in charge, the first thing you get to do is get curious and ask a lot of questions and listen to a lot of stories and meet with a lot of people. And I just love that you were like, yeah, of course, like, that's what you do. I think that's just so profound, Patty.
Well, and I wanted to get an idea of where to go with it. Like, what
Yeah.
does our chapter need in Big View? And I have done a little bit of research on what are the ways to change small versus big. So we started with city council meetings. So I looked up, we've got at least 5 different cities involved in our group. So our group meets in Clearfield. So I looked up our Clearfield city council meetings, and I was like, these are the nights they have meetings. I'd like to go attend one. Would you guys like to come with me? And there was 2 families, actually 3 families that came to the city council meeting. And we asked, how do you get in front of the council if you have a problem? Because one of the other families that didn't make it that night because they were sick wanted to talk to them about a crosswalk for school kids. That there was a really busy street, there wasn't a designated crosswalk. And I'm like, that's a legitimate thing. If your neighborhood is not being serviced by our city, let's find it out. So we looked into, how do you bring something up? And that's the thing. So we started with city, and then recently we talked about county. And I actually had an opportunity just this morning to go to the county council commission meeting. And I'm going to report back to my chapter on how it went. I was hoping a couple other people would join me, but it was at 10 o'clock this morning. So it was not a good time for our circle leaders that are at work or with little kids. So but I represented anyways. And it was interesting because the county commissioner came up to me and asked me, she's like, you look new. And I'm like, yeah, I'm here to kind of see what the process is and how it rolls, so that any of our families in Davis County can reach out for the things that we need. If you guys are working on a law or a county edict or whatever that we might need to be a part of, that you might need to hear our stories. I'm part of the circles group. She goes, I know the circles group. I know what you're talking about. And I was like, yes.
Oh, those relationships. I love it. And the process that you're engaging in, the democratic process, that democracy isn't a spectator sport. Like, you're just saying, okay, let's see how this works. And I'm just going to go, okay, great. Next step. Let's start talking to people, make relationships. And then also that being that bridge for other families to go see, like, oh, I could do this. I could go there. Oh, this is how it works. Oh, I could share my story. That's amazing. Just little by little, stair stepping your way into the relationships and the process. That's amazing.
See, and I was talking to Johanna the other day. I hope to go to a state level next. I want to see what the state is doing in the legislative session this year. And it may be too late to be involved in this year's legislative session, but I want us to get involved in the legislative session, because that is where, and that's what I told them. I'm like, the city is the place where the most happens that affects you personally.
Mhm.
County, city, county, those are your laws. That's where, if your grass is too long, that's where, I helped
Trash
explain to them
pickup.
what
Yeah.
they do for them, and why those places are elected, and why some of them aren't. Many of the city councils are elected by whoever happens to be in the room the day they do voting.
Mhm.
It's like, how wouldn't you want to know how these people that are making these rules, like, why aren't we there on the day they do the voting? Like, we
Yeah.
vote them in. And that's been the big deal, is your vote, your words, your story means something to not just you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're not the only one. Like, poverty, I think it's 7% of Utah is in poverty. And it
Mm.
doesn't sound like a big number, but it's a big number.
Yeah. Well, and there's there's just a couple things that I want to pull out from what you're talking about as well, which
Okay.
funny enough is telling your story, right? Um but I love, first of all, talking about that you're starting at the city level. I think so often, because national politics are in our faces so much, that we think that if we aren't doing something on the national level, it doesn't matter, it's not going to be, effective. And then also simultaneously we think, oh, it's too big, I'm just little old me, I can't do anything, and then nothing happens, right? Like, we both think that that's the only way to do something, and we can't do it, so it's got to be somebody else who's whatever. But I love that you're like, no, actually, it's the city is kind of the first, place where we can have our voices heard, and where they do care. And really, the smaller you get in government, you really are, yes, it's, whoever happens to be in the room is getting elected, but also that means that they're just people. They're just
Mhm.
people that want their city to be the best that it can. And I think that there is no better illustration of that than the city council chair walking up to you and introducing herself, and, ask and saying, "Hey, you're new here, what's up?" Things like that. It's like, yes, and that, I think it can be so scary to think about going into one of those places, or, you don't know what's going on or anything like that. But at the end of the day, they're just people who want to do the best they can for their city, and they want to know you as much, or maybe even more, because you're their constituents, as you want to know them. And so it really kind of, it removes the hopelessness of kind of looking at it from a national level. And it also, just kind of buoys that anybody can walk up and introduce themselves and ask questions. I've had a similar experience. There was a person walking his dog down the road, and somebody was like, "Oh, that's the mayor of the town we were in." And I went up and introduced myself and just kind of started asking him questions. We ended up in his garage office looking at pictures of his dog, right? So, like, they're just people that just want to make connections and have a good experience in their city, which is also their home. And so I love that example specifically of, you didn't even have to initiate. All you had to do was show up, and they were so excited to see you that they were coming up to you.
Well, and it was interesting, where I started happened because of what I heard from the stories. They were worried about something. And I went, where do we make a change in that?
Yep.
And so being able to work off of I'm hoping, as they get more comfortable talking in public, because a lot of the times they're very scared. They're very scared to say what they need or what they want. They're afraid that they're going to get ignored. They're afraid that it'll never change. This will never change.
Mhm.
No, it can change. And it only takes one person to speak up. But
Yeah.
what if our whole chapter got involved and there was 20 people with the same story? Then they're going to stop and go, wow,
Mhm.
maybe this is a bigger problem than I thought it was.
Yeah.
So it's in the small things. And even with the elections that happened back in November, I found out that a couple of our circles leaders had never voted. And I was like, "Oh, goodness. That is a right that many people died for." And so I went through and very politely explained what the civic duty of voting is. And we went through and we took the ballot apart, and I showed them the three divisions of government, and just the legislative branch and the executive branch, and what they do and where these people that we were voting for fit in it, and what these people did in their job, so that they could walk away and know more about voting. So we had 2 or 3 people that had never voted before got out and voted this year. I was like,
That's
yes.
That's just amazing. I think we forget, like, people just assume, well, you've been through high school, you understand, your 12th grade government class somehow magically, did we pay attention? I don't know. But to hear it again, like now that I'm in the thick of, let's say, I'm working with the national Big View team and I'm trying to understand like national legislation related to the cliff effect right now. And I'm going to Washington, D.C. in the first week of May to have a cliff effect day on the Hill. And it is intimidating and scary. And how does this work? And I need to reach out to my representatives. But this is giving me a lot of hope. Like, it's okay, show up, make the connection. Like, you don't have to know every step in the process, but know enough to take the next step. And so not only engaging in that democratic process more than I've ever done before, I think what I'm hearing you share a lot of, Patty, is leadership development. That like, it sounds like you've just come on fire with leadership of, oh my gosh, I can do this, and then I can support other people to do this, and then people to speak up and have a voice, and that they matter, and then they're engaging with policymakers. It feels like all of that is creating the almost like the next generation of leaders. Have you done any support for the folks to share their stories or to engage with the Big View?
We've had an opportunity to, our meals for our group have been donated by families in our community. We put it on the Just Serve website, and we've been able to have a lot of different families. And we've had families sit down with us for our meeting, and we have people that have been able to talk about what Circles is for them and how much of a support it's been. And that we started, like on our Big View night, we explained to them what Big View was. And these families, we've had some interest in these families coming back and doing ally work. And so being able to even just tell regular families that are coming in to assist us with a meal, is getting the word out that Circles is there and that it's there for people. And I think the more they get comfortable talking about their stories, the more it's going to be able to go, oh, look, the state legislature is doing this on this subject, and we think it would either help us or not help us. We need to get behind this. So let's go to the Hill. Let's reach out to somebody. We've got some connection. We've had some Senate. The majority whip has actually come to our meeting and helped let us ask her questions about stuff going on. And we've got some connections with the legislation on the county and city side. We've brought these people in and told them our stories in our safe space. that's been a big deal, is getting people comfortable talking in a safe space. Then you move up to a little bit of nervous space, and then you go, "Oh, this is a really big space, but it's okay because we've done this before." And I've got a very supportive team in the circle's leadership here. They always reach out and they're like, "How are you doing? What are you doing next? Is there something I can help you with?" And so they have provided some of the connections we have. Like I said, I didn't know we knew the Senate Majority Whip until she showed up at one of our meetings that we were doing, kind of like a town hall meeting. And she just came in and she's like, "I'm happy to answer any questions you have." And we're like, "What? Oh, here's my questions." And that's the thing. It's like getting it out there that we want to be involved. We
Right.
really actually want to be involved.
And to make those relationships and then to practice speaking and connections. But I love the thought of having that in a safe place and we practice and we just stair step our way to that bigger venue that may be a little more high
Mhm.
profile, but to have some practice and to feel comfortable with how to talk about circles, how to share our story, how to convey the message. And then especially if there's a focused priority, how do you get that priority across? I'm dying of curiosity. Chris, maybe you are too. I'm curious if there's a particular topic that you're working on right now in your big view. Do you have a certain focus?
Well, my focus has been on getting people comfortable with being in those situations where they can make change.
Yes.
So we have brought in, like on topic night, we've brought in people that deal with housing struggles and the bank. And so our stuff has been working into the regular circles meetings. So being able to help people come up with, well, like Chris said, you don't know what you don't know. So when we bring in these people, they start asking questions and just, "Oh, you mean there's something I can do about that?
Mm.
Oh, you mean if I talk to this legislative body, I might get the change in the crosswalk that I need? Oh, well, what if I need more low income housing in my city? Who do I talk to now? Or what are those things?" So my focus is getting our beautiful little group
Mhm.
comfortable with expressing what they want and what they need. So
Yeah.
that, and it's been me listening to them that has designed my setup. And
Yeah.
it's listening to them that I wanted to start with city. When I went up to county, my goal for the next year is to work on working up to state and being able to participate in the legislative session for the 2026 session. I asked a bunch of questions of the majority whip, and we've got a person on our circles open doors board that is involved in the legislative process and stuff. And she's been keeping us up to date on what's going on and if it affects any of our stuff. And so getting started, and they said, when you have a subject that you want to bring up, and it's interesting that you said cliff effects, because there's a couple states in the United States that have started a tiered program so that they
Yes.
don't just drop them off the. I would love to present that to our legislature and have it written up and use these other opportunities, these other states, what they did and how they did it to get it involved, get our legislature involved in doing something better for the cliff effects, giving us more opportunity to build that.
What's really exciting too about being part of the Circles USA family is that Circles USA is part of the National Cliff Effect Coalition with 13 other organizations. It's led by the Martha O'Brien Center in Nashville, Tennessee. But what's exciting is that, you know, we are going to DC about the cliff, but we also have like a one pager on the cliff effect. We made a video, like a little primer video, like learn about the cliff effect, and seeing what is happening in other states where we have chapters, like we've been sharing with each other. Yeah, this is what was really effective in Florida. This is what's really effective in Utah. I know they're trying to do the one door policy for Health and Human Services, but they still haven't nailed down the cliff effect part. So it'll be really interesting to see how, you know, how can the 6 chapters in Utah go to the state legislature together, because perhaps Circle Salt Lake has a little different relationship than Circles Davis County, than, you know, Circles in Southwest Utah. So like working as a group of chapters would be really, really interesting, using the Circles USA resources, and also like what have other chapters done, or what are other states doing. Because you're right, it's super powerful to talk to your state constituents and say, you know, in these other states, here are things that have already worked. Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Look at this, it really works. So I love where you're headed with that. And since we're just like networking during this podcast, if you go to do that, please, let's talk. Like, we have some great resources that we could do some of that together. It would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's the national big view, and then we've got the state big view and the local big view. I love how we work on all the different levels together. It's so good.
Well, and it's interesting because it was a city councilman that sat down and talked to me about, this is ridiculous and we keep talking about it. Well, did you know that this happened in this state, in this state? And she goes, and we can get the legislation that they actually wrote, and if you adjust it for us and hand it to
Yes.
a legislator and say, no, you know, make this a little more shiny.
Right. Update this a bit, refresh it. Here you go.
So it was her idea that got me really excited, because it is
Mm-hmm.
really tough. You get a good paying job and it takes one raise of $1, and you
Yep.
fall off that cliff. And then all of a sudden you are $1,500 short
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that it would take 4 to 5 years of raises in a job. Normally, just a natural process of raises to even get to the point where you could afford to get a raise.
Right.
And so I'm all about that networking, because I would really like to get a chance to put that in someone's hands, in our representatives' hands. We were talking that we need to do it in like October and November, well before it's got to get in the hopper.
Yes, thank you for that perspective, because it takes years and years for bills to get passed. Oftentimes it starts with the very non-glamorous audit where they just take stock of what they have. But then, yes, like even before the legislative session happens, to have the relationship in place, to go to the legislative session this year and see what's going on, to gather what other people are doing. And then, like you said, okay, now in October, talk to legislators, so that way in January of 2026, everything is aligned and ready to go. It's such a long game, but I'm curious how one of the things that our chapters try to do is, like, how do we keep our circle leaders engaged even though it's this really long game? That's always a quandary for me.
See, and we've got new circle leaders coming in. And so I don't think it's the first time we're going to go to city council meeting. I don't think it's the first time we're going to have the discussion on voting. It's not going to be the first time, it's going to be old hat for some of our leaders that have been here for a bit, but to go over these subjects more than once, because we do have new people are walking in almost every week.
Yeah.
And so reiterating these pieces that it is okay to want. You've got to get past the basic, you go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't have shelter and food, you can't get to the next step of security.
Mhm.
So as we build that, talk about your needs. Let's get your needs met. And then let's talk about our wants. If you could change it, what would you do?
Mm.
Okay, well, we've got this in the works that we're trying to do. Are you in? Do you want to go? All
Yeah.
right. I'll keep you posted. We're going to do this in October. We're going to try to do this in January. We want it to be a talking point. They may not take it up this year. It may be a couple years because the legislative session is only, what is it, 65
Right.
days here? Yeah, there's only so many days that it's on. So they look at the hopper, whatever else is in the hopper, and they determine which ones are the most priority. And
Yeah.
so that long game, I want to keep these little steps that we're building
Yeah.
and build on it.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely tell that I put two big view chairs into a room together and gave them a microphone.
I got
um, because I can just hear like the ideas are flying and there's networking happening now on this podcast and um
I love it.
and so we're actually just about out of time, y'all, which I can't believe it because this conversation has gone really fast. So I just want to like roll back a couple of points for our listeners as I've been listening to y'all of just like in this 35-minute conversation, we've gone from, talking on a city level to talking on a national level, right? And so just the reminder of the importance of taking our time. I really love Patty when Kamatara asked, like, what are you working on right now? You were like, building relationships, right? Building relationships, building confidence, building up in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like you were talking about. We can't help other people if we're in a place of not having our needs met, right? And I think the natural human thing is you get out of a struggle and you want to turn around and help those people that are still in that struggle get out. And so that's what this is doing, right? That's what the big view is allowing people to do, is to use the resources and tools and social capital and friendships and community to get themselves out of poverty. And then Big View's like, great, now that you're out of poverty, come on, let's go share your story. Let's, now we have this framework set up for you to do these next steps. And I also just wanted to throw out there a little reminder that it all counts, right? Like, yes, I am so excited to hear that you are working on getting your hands on the legislation that was passed in Florida for the cliff effect and getting it edited and in front of the Utah legislators, right? And that isn't not more important, or maybe the better word is it's not better than going to your city council and talking to them about that crosswalk,
Yes.
right? So it's just as a reminder to the people out there listening, whether you're a part of a huge coalition like that's doing something really massive, or you're just one person looking out the window going, oh my God, these kids keep having to cross the street right in front of my house, and the speed limit is 45 miles per hour. And I'm just terrified every moment of every day during school, walking times and school let out, that it doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you're doing something, right? And it's all about this asking, like, what's right in front of me to do? And what you'll find is what's right in front of you to do is a sidewalk or a crosswalk. And then all of a sudden, what's right in front of you to do is go to DC and do a cliff effect day, right? And so we just take it the step by step by step that it comes. And in the meantime, we have incredible people supporting us in that work, in, Patty, I can hear your passion, and I can also hear how you're bringing everyone along with you. You're like, I'm going to get you educated. We're going to figure this out together. We're going to make the relationships together. We're going to go do this thing, right? But it's all this we. And then same thing, Kamatara. I mean, you and I talk all the time, and it's just always this like bringing everyone along with us. Let's bring everyone along with us. And I just love that perspective, Patty. I feel like the heart you have for this work is just so perfect as the Big View chair. Like, this is it. And so I want to end with one final question for you, Patty, really. And then, maybe Kamatara and I might have a couple thoughts on the end because it's a good question across the board. And it kind of leans into what Kamatara was saying of like this bigger picture. So you're doing all this work, Patty, and you're stair stepping your way up. And I fully expect to like see you on C-SPAN in a few years, like pretty quickly, right?
Running for office.
But in the meantime, like looking at all of this work that you're putting in, what is your vision for the future of Big View and also of your community? So your smaller, city, county, but also like your state, the nation, like what's your vision for what's possible? Like what's your why for doing this work?
Well, my vision, where we have these families that have these beautiful little children, my vision is that when they get to be 18, 20, 25, that they are already participating in their local governments, in their elections, in their state. I want them to be, well, my mom did it and I can do it. My vision is to give people their voice, and
Hmm.
so that their families get involved. I don't want it to just be this little circles chapter. I want their sisters and brothers that know that their sibling has struggled to get out of poverty. I want them all on that hill with me.
Hmm.
I want families to understand that they have a voice, that they can change their world with not very many steps.
Hmm. That's beautiful. I love that, Patty. Mm, that feels like a pretty good end to me. Is there anything you have to add, Kamatara?
Honestly, that's the vision, that it's community driven solutions by people closest to the challenge, and you just embody every every piece of that. It's like at the heart of what we do here, that it's yeah, led by the community. So thank you for bringing that to your community.
Yeah, and thanks so much for joining us, Patty. This conversation has been just so life-giving for me and so hopeful of, that you can do it. And by you, I mean literally anyone.
Mhm.
Right? And if you happen to not live in Davis County, Utah, and don't
Mhm.
have Patty to show you the way, um go look up your local circles chapter at circlesusa.org, or if there's not one, go find the people that are doing this work and do it alongside them. And if you do happen to be in Patty's neighborhood, run, don't walk to their circles chapter to start making a difference alongside her. So thank you so much for being with us, Patty.
Thank you for the opportunity.